To begin, I'd like to thank the Attorney General of Georgia for being my warm-up act. It's good to have somebody go on and test the crowd. So, always good. And I did leave this up on the computer for anyone who is interested. This is a very good website, rcfp.org. If you are interested in doing any sort of these public information requests, FOIAs, as we hear people like to throw that around, Freedom of Information requests, you can use this website, and this particular one has been tailored for the state of Georgia. So all you need to do is fill in who you're addressing, your full name, your address, what agency you're going after, what exactly you're looking for, and it will actually give you an entire list, and it will print out the letter basically for you, so you won't have to work too hard on that. So that's been done. Again, it's great to be in the state of Georgia. This is where James Oglethorpe, when he founded the colony, made it specifically illegal to have slavery. Obviously, that was later turned over, but it's great to be here. It's one of my favorite places. I also grew up in North Carolina, not too far away, and originally from Montreal, so we're all around the world and ready to inform, investigate, and look to journalism. So, let us begin. I am the Florida Bureau Chief for Watchdog.org. That is this website here. We are in many states, as Eric was saying before. I run the Florida Bureau. We have stories in English and in Spanish. I do the translating from Spanish into English for our website in Florida. We also have Spanish reporters all over the country. We haven't done too much reporting in Georgia, and actually the only people who have reported on Georgia for Watchdog.org are, well, it's actually been me. I did one about Eric Holder and the abortion clinic that's tied to him that his family owns, so I was able to report on that just a few months ago. You can look that up if you would like. But we will go on with investigative journalism. Now, to me, this is very important. This is what I've been doing at Florida Watchdog, as I like to call it, or watchdog.org. I've been doing that now for almost a year. And it's all about doing investigations. State, local government, county government, whatever it may be, anyone who's involved in malfeasance and doing anything that would be contrary to what people are supposed to do in government. I am sent in, I am dispatched, I write the articles, and we have the information. And our model, as Eric was saying, is very different. There's the activism side, and again, I don't really play into that. I'm not the blue team or the red team. I'm not left or right, Democrat or Republican. I'm French Canadian, so I get to opt out of all of those. So for me, I run the Florida Watchdog site, and this is our website here. People can click around on it, and again, we're going to try to expand as much as we can at watchdog.org, and hopefully we'll be coming to a day near you. I like to talk about the 5 essentials to investigative reporting that anybody can do. Because really, at the end of the day, I don't need a license to do what I do. I didn't have to apply for an exam. I studied history. I did not study journalism in school. I really don't think it's required. And actually, my boss told me that in order to have a good journalist, you really don't want them to go to journalism school. They're not learning the right things nowadays. So 5 essentials. Number 1, become an expert. Number 2, question the narrative. Make them go off script. Connect the data and the dots. And lastly, tell the story succinctly. So I'd like to go through some pertinent examples for all of us to look at, especially becoming an expert. Now, really, what does that mean? For a lot of people, that we have this old idea that you go to the library for 3 hours at a time, and you read books of everything, but we don't need to do that anymore. We can hook up to Google News, news.google.com, type in any subject that we could ever think of. We'll see every article that's been written and transcribed to the internet right there at the tip of our fingertips. You have Wikipedia, which will give you more background information on what's been going on with those topics. You have things like Ballotpedia, which I think are vital for local politics, finding out who your local state senators are. I saw 2 of them just wander in. Maybe you've never seen them in the face before, but you can find out all their information, what bills they've been pushing, so that's a good resource. At the federal level, we do have the Library of Congress website, where we have the laws that come out every single day. And I mean every single day. There are new laws and new regulations every day. So we can try to keep on that. Also, Amazon, I also recommend to anyone, you just find used books on any topics if you want more research. But more importantly, I think what we're looking at here is what citizens can do. And citizens, if there's one thing you can do, it is look at source documents. If you look at those PDFs and those conference reports, we pay people in government to write reports all the time, and nobody ever reads them. Nobody who could actually look at them and say, oh my God, what is going on in our government? These things are happening, and what journalists most of the time do is they'll look at these. And this is where you're able to question not just someone's telling of a story, but the actual story, the actual proof, the actual law, not just what somebody said about it. And it's glad that you had the Attorney General. You could have grilled him. I'm glad I'm in Florida. We already have sunshine laws. I don't have to worry about paying money to get stuff from the government. No way. They're taking enough of our money. So another way that I like to become an expert, as I like to say it, is to follow the loop of information. Get up on Google alerts. Get up on Twitter. Get up on the Facebook. Be able to spread your stories very easily. Look at blogs. Blogs are very important, as Eric was saying, in local politics now. They're making a move because we can't fund all these journalists. Look at studies. What are universities doing all day long? They're not just teaching students. They have to justify their teaching positions by writing all sorts of studies all day long. So I recommend that. I think it's very important. Twitter. My last point. But being that as it may, you really need to, as a citizen journalist or as an information activist, you have to believe in what you're going after. And I think most of you are here because you do believe. Most of your friends and colleagues might be sitting at home watching television and tuning out, but you're tuning in. You're here, you're getting active, you're in the Capitol, you're holding these people accountable. They came here, these legislators, to see you. They want to know what you're saying. What I've tried to do in my reporting is to make people mad, make people upset. People in government, that's all they do is write laws, is tell us what we can and can't do. So, you know what, I want to question things. I was a reporter in Gastonia, North Carolina for a while, and I worked for the newspaper, and I did an article on, hey, why not? How much do these film companies get every single year from the government? It turned out in the state of North Carolina to be a lot, to be a great deal. I found out that basically 2% of what you're paying in taxes goes right to these Hollywood production companies. They come right out, they're not creating any jobs really, maybe at the local sandwich stand, and they get your tax dollars. You don't have to like the movie, they just get the money anyway. And that's something that I just found was interesting. And I also saw that the US military has an entire department just dedicated to having movies come through. They're looking at the scripts, they're asking if they can put in Hummers and Humvees and jets, and I mean, this is all government money. It's all funded by you, so you're paying, your government money is being used to then get you to go to the movie theater. It's fascinating. I mean, it's if you look at it nationwide, and I've done more reporting in Florida, especially with ties to Disney, we're talking in the billions of dollars that production companies get. How much money did you guys get in incentive dollars from the government last year? Any billions? A little bit? Haven't got mine yet. Another story I did was just about the drone. We have a drone there in Gastonia that keeps watch over the people and keeps them safe, obviously. And I did a story about why the drone wasn't working anymore. It was just standing out in a nice little wooden shed and was gathering dust. And I asked the local sheriff, well, what's wrong? What's going on? And he lamented to me with a sad face. Well, federal regulations, we can't really put our drone in the air anymore. And he was telling me the story of how effective this drone was. It was able to spy on a local motorcycle gang who was gathering at a fair. It wasn't a motorcycle gang, it was a band of senior citizens who enjoy the Sunday drives, but the drone was flown in overhead to zoom in on their faces and make sure they were not part of a nefarious gang. So that's great use, again, of government resources, and this is just at the local level, and it really was not hard to do this type of reporting. People think that journalists work 24 hours a day piecing together stories. The thing is we find nuggets of information and we write about it. It's not long to turn it around. And obviously I'm not in the newspaper industry anymore. I am now on the online world in watchdog.org. My second point is about questioning the narrative. I think that's something that you guys, you're already doing by definition, by being here. You're questioning what the mainstream media is putting out every day. And one way that I always try to convey this is the allegory of the cave. This goes back to Plato. We're talking 3000 BC. The idea that there are images that are put up before us and somehow we're just supposed to take in what they're telling us, or just basically, like Eric was saying, the television is talking at us and we have to just accept it. We're not allowed to question it. And what I try to do is tell people, ask your own questions. Don't let the government officials come out and tell you, well, this is what we think on A, B, and C. come out there with a question about D, E, or F. It'll throw them off of their timing. It'll throw them off of what they've been trying to do and trying to push you in a certain direction on an issue. You have to reject these assumed truths that people just, I don't know, they've just come to accept. One thing that I try to do in my capacity as a journalist in the state of Florida is completely reject the pack mentality. If you read newspapers today, or you get on the internet, most of the articles, usually most of the time, are pretty much the same on every single given topic. People say, let's say they'll research one topic and they'll have 5 articles on it from all different types of newspapers. So I'm always asking different questions. I'm looking at different things that aren't making the front page when they should be. Front page of the USA Today yesterday was, economists are hopeful that the economy is recovering. Yeah, they've been saying this for a long, long time. And of course, that's the pack mentality. USA Today, look for 2-3 days. That same story will be replicated again and again and again. That's how it works. You have to be able to find your own answers and not let those fall. People are in this pack mentality. That's what journalists do all the time. The people who read media the most, who are most involved, are other journalists. They just read stuff all the time. I've seen it myself. So that's one way that you could, if you were in that capacity, reject the narrative. And obviously that's why it's a fictional television program and they're allowed to do that. We'll let them. Another question that I brought up is we have a nice thing called the education lottery in the state of North Carolina. Sounds great, doesn't it? You can gamble your money away and know that you're helping your grandchildren, your children. You're going to have the greatest education in the world. Well, these claims are great and they're nice and they sound perfect and they're great to put on a little instructional card that you receive in the mail, but where is that money actually going? Well, when I started to research it, it turns out it wasn't going to education. It was going to just building new schools that adhere to a specific type of program. Most of it, actually, in the state of North Carolina in the year 2011, went to, that's right, Medicaid, because it was a huge pile of money. They needed it. It was available. Why not? All the money went right into Medicaid. And with the brand new Affordable Care Act, who knows what will happen next. So that's the education lottery going on right now in North Carolina. And there are other ways that you could look at this. I've done a lot of reporting on our Florida Senator Bill Nelson. Now, Bill Nelson, he gets on, he's a nice little fellow, Florida, talks, and you know, he's a quiet, well-mannered person, and he really never receives any bad press at all. Well, what I wanted to do is just use different tools like opensecrets.org. This is where you can see exactly how much money all of your politicians, whether it be your senator or your local representative, how much they're giving from different industries or whatever it may be. You can see who is funding their campaign. It turns out that Bill Nelson gets a lot of his money from an Italian defense company called Finmeccanica, SPA, and from Lockheed Martin. And they've also been great beneficiaries of earmarks that Bill Nelson himself wrote, pushed forward, and got passed. Now, whether you like the military or not, or you like defense contractors or not, this is the thing that happens all the time. It happens all the time, and people talk about it all the time, but they never can point to the specific individual instance when it actually happens. This took me 5 minutes on the internet to find. It's not too difficult. You can do it too. But again, it's not just picking on Democrats. I'll go after Republicans too. I'll go after all of them. We have a congressman in Florida. He's in my district. I'm located in Tampa. His name is Bill Young. He's been there for, oh goodness, since the Vietnam War. And this is a fellow that basically has exactly the same problem. In fact, he's earmarked more than anyone else in the Congress. He's who used to be the chair of the Appropriations Committee, which is a very, very powerful position. And in 2010 alone, he earmarked $128 million. Now, that doesn't sound much in the context of trillions and trillions, but this is one man. 434 other colleagues in the House and 100 other senators. Now, another thing I like to look at is who got that money, and I went to opensecrets.org, again, run by the Center for Responsive Politics in Washington, and it turns out that, again, all those earmarks that he was pushing through were to the same companies that gave him money directly. Over $200,000 just in 2010 alone went to companies which directly benefited from earmarks authored by Bill Young. And this is just one congressman. Again, what's going on in Georgia? My third point is about making them go off script. Now, for a lot of people who aren't plugged into that, I'm glad that Joel was talking about, the youth movement, and people are engaged in news, and they are. But the problem is that most of the news we have today is fake, is not real, has been scripted, is in a way benefiting the person who's giving you the message. There's no fault that there are PR departments for every large political firm or business or whatever it may be. They're there to craft a model. I like to tell my journalist friends to basically shun the PR model. Do not just quote from the press release. Go farther than that. Ask the real questions. When we allow people to communicate through press releases, we're allowing them to control the conversation, control it all. So you can set the debate by asking the right question. That's always going to be important. And this was recently brought up again in a great New York Times piece, and you can read it in other pieces all the time, but the fact is that people in general are starting to distrust the traditional media. It's going down their confidence. That's why, like Joel was saying, people are turning to the internet. People are turning to AFP Foundation. They're turning to different organizations because they see that the things that they read in the New York Times are, oh wait, they're actually fake. That's an article that was, this article that I was talking about in the New York Times, this was during the campaign between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, talking about how all these journalists were giving up the opportunity to ask real questions just so they could sit on Obama's plane, or so they could sit on Romney's plane. So you can sit there and you can hug the governor, you can hug the the president, Barack Obama, but you can't ask them real questions. They'll decide what they answer. So what I like to say, what I like to do in my work in Florida is not letting them put you in the position of you being a pawn in their game, of you just being a citizen, when really you're a taxpayer, you're very powerful. You control the purse, not just the House of Representatives. That money has to come from somewhere, and it does come from you. So you never have to fall without actually going back to your instincts. That's always going to be important, and for all of my work that I've done in Florida, that's all I've ever looked at. So I like to look at talking points. Talking points are great, aren't they? We hear them all the time, and we know it, we can pick up on it. How many of you hear talking points when you talk to your friends about politics? Do you hear those a lot? One talking point we had in Florida is, well, the shady Republican groups are flooding elections with cash, billions of dollars. Well, I actually went in and looked at the numbers, which a lot of journalists just don't do. And it turns out that the House Democrats were getting plenty of money, in fact, more money. In fact, more money was coming in against the Republican candidates. All the money that was raised to defeat Alan West, all the money that was used to help prop up Alan Grayson. It's a lot of cash, but again, that wasn't explored. Nobody talked about it that way. It was the shady Republican groups that were controlling the elections. But at the end of the day, it's just not true. It's not true. People have a way of connecting the dots before there's any sort of data brought about. You have to reach your own conclusions once the facts are there. I don't want to go too much into it, but the whole deal with the shooter that we had in Newtown, Connecticut, the whole debate is now about AR-15 and these scary-looking guns, when in fact, he didn't use an AR-15 at all. It was found in the trunk of his car. But again, don't question the media. Do as you're told. Ideas like this have consequences. And this has been proven. They've gone into it. But again, this has been the agenda of a lot of people who are very powerful in this country who would like to push that. These are things that happen every day, and people do not have the time to look at and investigate because, frankly, we have to work. We have to put food on the table. We can't all sit in front of the computer and investigate and call people and actually look into stuff all the time. But you, as citizen journalist, on your own, can just do a tiny bit of work. And what can you derive from that? Information, knowledge. You can use that to educate and become information activists. I think it's very powerful. I've worked with a lot of information activists in Florida, and they put out great information. Now, we know a little tale about Brian Ross.
Now, I want to go to Brian Ross here, because Brian, you've been looking at investigating the background of Jim Holmes. You've found something that might be significant.
There is a Jim Holmes of Aurora, Colorado page on the Colorado Tea Party site as well, talking about him joining the Tea Party last year. Now, we don't know if this is the same Jim Holmes, but it's Jim Holmes of Aurora, Colorado.
Okay, we'll keep looking at that. Yes. Brian Ross, thanks very much. Let's get a from Sam.
Poor guy. He just went to Google, put in the name, and goes, well, I think I found us a nugget. And it went on the news. Again, what if that meme had caught on and it just became a fact that the guy who was involved in the Colorado shooting was the founding member of the Tea Party? This is the Tea Party agenda. What would that have done worldwide? What would that have done to normal information activists in small towns or big cities that are just trying to push through their message? They would be smeared by this entire campaign. Again, that's just one small example. That's all that media is. Any of you recognize this fellow by any chance? Sounds like a politician. Looks like a politician. He is a politician! This is U.S. Representative Cliff Stearns, a Republican from Ocala. Again, Republicans, Democrats, they're the ones spending the money. I'm just there to criticize them. I don't really care who wins. So this nice gentleman was first elected to Congress in 1989, the same year I was born. Felt great. And when he was first elected, he said, you know what, the most important thing that I will do is I will pursue term limits. I will make sure that these people do not go to Capitol Hill and just stay there and become part of the machine. And this is something that was very openly reported at the time. But of course, nobody had gone back and actually, criticized him on that. 24 years later, when he was still on Capitol Hill, being a legislator. So I was able to write an article about it and question his office and get him to come out with a statement from his public relations person. And the story got out. It got out, people started understanding, and he was defeated. Now again, I can't make that claim, it wasn't me. But he was defeated in the primary. He was defeated by a veterinarian down in Gainesville. I mean, this is just something that happens in one small place, one small time. Who knows what could happen here in Georgia if the same measures apply that we actually hold these people to account. My last point is about telling the story succinctly.